Hello there, I'm Aiden, and welcome to A Pastor's Life for Me. So as I said in our last video when we went over books of the Bible at a glance, that this week we would go over, Bible blueprints. Both of these being overviews of the Bible book by book to give you the books of the Bible, as it says, at a glance, or give you the blueprints, or in other words, an outline for it, for your convenience when you read through a book, or when you're wanting to reference a book, or you just want a summary of what that book is about. Now, apparently, somehow I missed it. I don't know how I did this because, well, I bought both of them, but both of these are made by the same company. Somehow I didn't notice when I bought them off the same website. I mean, I did do it at different times, but I thought I would just point that out there. And I guess to start off the review of Bible blueprints, to be honest, I would recommend that you don't get Bible at a glance at all and just simply get the Bible blueprints. The reason for this is basically all the important information in Bible at a glance, like the author of the book, when the book was written, the range of the time period covered in the book, and the important points of the book are all contained in Bible blueprints. And Bible Blueprints just has so much more. So instead of spending the $10 to $13 on the Bible at a glance and then $10 to $13 on Bible Blueprints, you can just get all that information when you get Bible Blueprints. And I did allude to this last week, how I said the way that Bible Blueprints is laid out is far better than Bible at a glance. As Bible at a glance is simply at a glance. It is a glance of the book. And I would even go as far to say as it's not even an overview of the book, because it just lacks so much information. Whereas Bible Blueprints has most of that information that you would want or need when doing an overview of the book in a single page. And if you'll remember on my last video, I said that one of the things that I disliked about Bible at a glance was the fact that it is lacking that information. Bible Blueprints completely makes up for that. And since Bible Blueprints is from the same people as Bible at a glance, basically all the pros that I talked about in Bible at a glance also apply to Bible Blueprints. Some of those things being 6-day creation, a premillennial view of the Bible, its position on the authors of the book and when the books were written, as well as other things are all contained in Bible Blueprints, as you can see with me showing up on a slide right now. So all the important and good information that you would want out of Bible at a glance is in Bible Blueprints, and so all the pros of it also are in Bible Blueprints. But because Bible Blueprints has more stuff to it, there are also more pros to it as well. As I said, this is actually more of a true overview of the books, and that would be the next pro that I would go into. It basically starts by giving you a few sentence overview of the book, but then the bulk of the page is breaking up the book into different sections. So as you can see here in Genesis, it breaks up it into 5 different sections. By then breaking up it into these sections, they can give a synopsis of what takes place in each one of those sections, rather than having to do that all for the entire book in just one short paragraph. So you do get a really good overview of the book. Could the overview go deeper? Well, no, in the sense that you'd be going more than a page, and this is meant to be contained within one page. Yes, in the sense that, again, this is a very, very broad overview. But something like this isn't meant to replace your reading. It's meant to remind you of the things that took place in those chapters. So I wouldn't say that if you read through every page and every synopsis of the book of the Bible that you would have a clear overview understanding of the Bible, unless you would actually read through the Bible. And when I say read through the Bible, I mean you'd have to do that several times. This is designed so that after you know these stories, you can look back at a synopsis like this and be like, oh yeah, I remember that taking place there. And that's one of the really big benefits of using something like this. So I really love how they break up the books into sections and give you that synopsis for those reasons that I just stated. Something else that I like about Bible Blueprints is in the overview for the epistles, it talks about the history and the situation behind why the book was written. And then when you get into the synopsis, it tells you what's contained in these chapters. So in the epistles, the overview is much like an introduction to the book. And that's quite helpful for remembering, okay, well, why did Paul write 1 Corinthians, for example? This leads me then into some of the cons, and the first one being that I find in these overviews about the epistle, and even somewhat into the synopsis, it lacks what the theme of the book is. So the overview talks about the background and the history and the situation behind the book, but it often doesn't discuss why Paul would write that letter to begin with. In the case in many of his letters to combat a certain false teaching. I say this as a con because it would just make these blueprints that much stronger if it contained those as well as the history and the situation behind the book. Some of the cons that I had mentioned for Bible at a glance, Bible Blueprint fixes, just because it goes more in depth. One of those being a better understanding of the prophets, but that's not fixed entirely. Going back to Isaiah, if you remember Bible at a glance, to be honest, I said that Isaiah, the way that they did it was just bad. For Bible Blueprints for Isaiah, I wouldn't say that it's bad, but I'd say it's rough. It does give you more information about the prophet. And again, that overview, who Isaiah is, the time period that he was at, and some facts about him and his life is fantastic. But going to the synopsis of the book, the way that they laid it out, again, is rough. As you can see, they laid out Isaiah into 3 sections. The signs of the kingdoms, which they put Isaiah chapter 1 through 39. Then they do the restoration of Judah after the exile, with Isaiah 40 through 55. And then the new heavens and earth in Isaiah 56 to 66. While I believe that the synopsis points for 2 and 3 are pretty good, and we'll get into the areas that I think they're lacking in when we actually do our own synopsis of Isaiah, to summarize Isaiah chapter 1 through 39 into just one section, again, is a lack of knowledge of the book. The book of Isaiah is a collection of Isaiah's prophecies, right? You have the first 5 chapters, and then all of a sudden you have chapter 6, which talks about the call of Isaiah as a prophet. And then you're jumping forward in time when you get to chapter 7. And so in Isaiah, there are these clear sections, and I think if the synopsis were to break up the book in those sections, it would be much better. For example, chapters 1 through 5, and then chapter 6 being the call of Isaiah. Then chapters 7 through 12 are all one large section. Then you could do something like 13 through 35, talking about judgment and redemption. Then 36 through 40, talking about the Assyrian invasion and Hezekiah. And then have the 2 sections that they have here to close it off. But as it is here, putting it in 3 sections, I think is quite lacking for the book. So though I wouldn't say that Isaiah is bad, it is rough. Another book in Bible Blueprints that I think is rough is Psalms. They decide to break up Psalms into 5 sections. You might be asking, well, what's wrong with that? Well, if they broke it up into 5 sections according to how the Psalms is actually broken up into 5 sections, it would be fine. I don't know if you've ever noticed when you're looking through Psalms, but it says book 1, book 2, book 3, book 4, and book 5, right? So Psalms is naturally already broken up into 5 sections. But in Bible Blueprints, they decide to break it up into 5 sections depending on the author. As you can see, they say section 1 is the 73 Psalms by King David. Section 2 is the 12 Psalms written by Asaph and his family members. Section 3 is the 11 Psalms written by the sons of Korah. 4 is smaller contributions, and 5 is remaining Psalms. I'm not sure why they broke it up into these 5 sections when the book has already done that for them. In the synopsis of each of these sections, they just give you a list of the Psalms and who wrote them. When if you actually looked at each one of the books and the Psalms contained in them, you would see that there is themes and patterns to that. They also make the claim that Psalms are organized somewhat chronologically. If you were then to flip over to Proverbs, they say, unlike the book of Psalms, which was compiled chronologically, Proverbs is compiled by format and theme. But Psalms really isn't ordered chronologically. It seems like it is, and I think the reason for that is almost half of them are written by David. And then the other largest amount are ones where there's no author given. So you're looking at a quarter of the Psalms actually being written by people other than David or people in David's time. So in that sense, yes, the Psalms are written chronologically with people from different times and eras inserted in different places, which then would make it really not chronologically. Going back to how they laid out the synopsis of sections, I do think the best way would be to break it up into the 5 sections according to the 5 books. But another way that they could have done it that I would have been fine with is if they broke it up into the themes of the Psalms. And you can do research into this, but people have made categories of what kind of psalm does each psalm fall into? Whether that be, praising the Lord, a lament, etc. If they broke the book up into that section, that would have been okay with me, because it's still sticking with themes from the book. I just think that the way that they did it is quite odd. But overall, this series of Bible blueprints is very good, and I would recommend that you get it. I mean, it's only 13 bucks. It'll serve you well, and it is very useful. The cons that I do have with it are very, very minimal. So I encourage you, get yourself a copy. There's a link below in the description in case you're wanting to do that. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. That's all that we've got for today. So until next time, remember to know the word, do the word, and share the word. But as always, we do it in love.